agency, please.
Agency members Draymond.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Chairman Yusefian.
Here, maybe have your roll report, please.
The agenda for the September 11, 2007 regular meeting of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency was posted on Thursday, September 6, 2007 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
What's next, please?
Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Motion second. The minutes will stand approved as submitted. What's next, please?
Next is oral communication. Discussion is limited time is not part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Members of the redevelopment agency may question or respond to a speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The matter may be referred to staff through the executive director for investigation and report.
I have one card. Mr. Milano. Herbert Milano.
Good afternoon. My name is Herbert Milano, members of the Redevelopment Agency and city staff. I'm interested in maybe having some clarification with regard to certain documents that are produced by the City of Glendale, especially with regard to projects on the redevelopment area. I happen to have with me the draft environmental impact report for the Verdugo Gardens project. I happen to have this one simply because I missed speaking on the prior project, the hotel on Maryland and Wilson. So this is the next one that's coming up and for which there is information pending or decisions pending with regard to this document. I'm going to refer to page 4.1, section 4.1, page 5. It says the following. The downtown specific plan was also designed to implement the vision, goals, and policies of the Greater Downtown Specific Plan. I think they meant the Greater Downtown Strategic Plan, adopted by the City of Glendale in November 1996. All right, so these documents refer back to this, should we say, master document. Okay, and in order to highlight what I want to talk about parks, I have here the recreational planning areas of the City of Glendale that I'd like to hand to our City Council. Because I want to refer to the deficiency of parks in this area. Here. And as I send it to you, I want to basically refer to the information on the Greater Downtown Strategic Plan. It says the following, that on Recreational Planning Area 6, which is an area, should we say, north of Broadway and east of Brand, the ratio of residents to park area, or ratio per 1,000 residents, is 5.56. In Recreational Planning Area 7, which is south of Broadway and west of Brand, it's 0.35 of an acre per 1,000 people. In Recreational Planning Area 8, which is way down by Maple Park and so forth, we have 1/5, 0.2 of an acre per 1,000 people. On Recreational Planning Area 9, which is sort of like the Mariposa District, is 0.38 acres per 1,000 residents. And on Recreational Planning Area 10 is, well, I don't know if this is a mistake. It says 0.03 acres per 1,000 residents. I look at this thing, it's like I'm astonished. All right. So and so whenever a justification is made with regard to the need for parks and open space, the number that is given is 1.4 acres for the city as a whole, right? But you all know that neighborhood parks attend to about a couple of acres from the center, and the community parks, a little bit larger, but it's still within that area. So I don't think it is fair to establish a comparison of the citywide ratio of 1.4 acres per 1,000 people when there's construction taking place in these areas, and this is what should be, relevant and germane to a discussion of the goals and objectives, of the city. So, according to this document on the environmental impact report for this project, there are 51 projects which are either proposed or approved for a total of 7,126 people. Okay, and so if we have a goal, from either 1 to 6 acres, what's the amazing deficiency then? Because these projects are taking place in these recreational planning areas. So it means that every day that goes by, every year, we are basically increasing the shortage, right? The deficiency becomes larger. There's another part of this document that refers to the Southern California Associations of Government that they expect our population increase to be around 900 persons per year. And so when this project is, the rationale for this project says that because it's less than 900 persons for this project, then we should be, should simply go ahead. But yet, if we were to add all of the other projects, we have over 7,000 people. At what point is a project considered part of the cumulative effects that the city has? Is it with this project? Is it with the next project? Is it with the previous project? And also, according to this document, it says that the city looks at past performance. Okay, so I just want a clarification as to how you can reconcile it, because I can reconcile those words with what has taken place. Thank you.
Could somebody deal with the issue of the cumulative impact? I mean, the first part was just basically statements, but there was one question, and the question was, this is less than 900. I don't know if that's accurate statement, because I do not have that EIR, by the way. I guess he's the only one who has it. Council has not received that particular EIR yet. So I want to know, how do you deal with that aspect of it?
Sure, Mr. Chair, members of the agency. Every project EIR is required to analyze the impacts of the project on a project basis, so I don't have that EIR in front of me at the moment either to verify whether it's in fact 900 new residents. But whatever that number is, that number has to be evaluated to determine whether or not that is a significant impact on population and housing, as well as cumulatively, as Mr. Milano pointed out. It has to be looked at within the context of the additional projects that have been proposed and are not speculative. They're reasonably foreseeable development, and the measure there is whether or not the project's contribution is considered to be cumulatively considerable. And that is that if it doesn't have a project impact, typically it's not counted as a considerable contribution to cumulative impacts as well. And the SCAG numbers are one of the benchmarks which are used to evaluate population housing impact. And the question is whether or not it exceeds those projections. So I don't have that EIR in front of me to speak to whether or not, in fact, that particular project exceeds or has a significant impact cumulatively on population and housing. I seem to recall that it doesn't. Mr. Milano perhaps can point that out.
Mrs. Starbird.
Well, Mr. Chair, this is the second project where we've heard reference to SCAG's projections. We need to keep in mind that SCAG's projections are over 20 years, and they're an average.
That's
and
correct.
obviously, communities don't grow on an average with an equal number every year. They have high years and low years, and market drives development. Lots of factors come into play, and I think SCAG recognizes that communities don't grow on a precise number every year based on their projections. So you have to take these numbers for what they are, which is from SCAG, their projections. They're only that. And the RENA numbers are just estimates based on population projections, but communities don't grow based on projections. They grow based on market factors and other dynamics that come into play. So any one year you might be more, you might be less.
That's true. The SCAG numbers as well incorporate updates that are provided from the cities. And so their numbers track along with the population figures that we are required to report out. And so those numbers and projections are adjusting constantly.
I understand that, but I think the verbiage in here, which I just got, basically says, as discussed in the section 4.2, population and housing of the EIR between 2000 and 2030, 2030, so it's a 30-year projection. The city is expected to experience a population increase of 26,908 persons, or approximately 900 persons per year. The proposed project is expected to generate 613 persons, which is below the expected annual increase. For this reason, the proposed project does not conflict with this goal. Okay?
And that is a draft EIR. We'll make sure that you all have a copy of that EIR. It's currently in circulation as a draft.
I think one of the issues that Mr. Milano was raising is last week we approved a 200-unit project. If in that 200 there's 2 people, that's 400 people. So if what he's asking for, I guess I'm assuming that's what he's asking for. If you take that 400 and let's say we approve this year, there is 400 and then there's another 600 in here, and if we approve another project that has 100, so does that have a major issue, or this language that is used in here is even appropriate language?
We will need to respond to that comment. We
Okay.
will take the comment that has been made today as a comment on the draft EIR. And
Yeah, we should take it as a comment and respond
That will
appropriately.
be, there will be a written response to that comment that will be incorporated into the final EIR.
Mr. Chair, if I can, on the question you asked, I think it does raise a question, irrespective of this specific EIR, but we've seen it referenced before. I really think it's something we should look at relative to the way the language is used in these EIRs, because SCAG's projection is a projection. It's not a goal. It's just a projection of what they think is likely to happen over a 30-year period of time, which then begins to drive a number of things in the planning area. But to then take that estimate and set it up as if it is a goal, or you're under or you're above it, obviously you're going to be whatever it is, and SCAG's projections are a 30-year projection of what they think, everything being equal, growth would likely be in a community like Glendale. To use it like it's a hard and fast rule seems to me to be a misuse of the numbers, frankly.
And that's correct. The section that you were reading from, the question there that's posed is whether or not the project, as proposed, conflicts with the goals. And so that was the answer to that particular provision, was does it or does it not conflict with the goals set forth in the projections of SCAG, and it doesn't.
And the staff is not the one who writes the EIR.
No.
It's the consultant
That's right.
that has been hired. They're the ones who write the EIR. But nevertheless, I think that question has been asked, and I think you would like to look at that as we deal with the other EIRs that is coming. That was my last oral communication. Oral communications closed. What's next, please?
Comment.
Mr. Weaver.
Yeah, Mr. Lano brings up about Area 10. I knew that back in '97 when I talked about taking the lot that is now where the Embassy Suites is going to be built and put a park in. My colleagues told me no, that should be used for something else. A park could go elsewhere. When we talked about the area across the street, when I laid it out and could put at least 2 soccer fields and other space across the street in that area, the vote was 3-2 to put in Ralph's Market and the other shopping center, rather than put in a park in the area most in need in Glendale, over and above South Glendale and West Glendale. Not that many opportunities open that the city council can sit and look at big enough areas like this that are assembled into one ownership that we can indeed put a park in. There are opportunities, and there were 2 that were passed on. Now we'll get TOT out of the Embassy Suites, and we get some revenue out of across the street, but the kids are the ones that are suffering for that.
This was prior to my election, and actually everyone's election on the dais, but I agreed with Mr. Weaver at the time. We missed a tremendous opportunity across the street, as he says, what's now the Ralph's building. That was an incredible opportunity to do a large-size park, and in fact there could have been some commercial development surrounding what should have been park space.
Churchill's could have stayed.
Yeah.
Well, but I think, in that respect, I think this council has taken some steps in a small way, not
Yeah, I'm
huge
just
way, but
saying.
in a small way,
Big
since we've been in, and we have opened up more mini parks in this area.
Well, just since you've raised it, I wouldn't editorialize it as in a small way. You have in 5 years built 7 mini parks. You have more on the horizon. You've purchased over $30 million of open space. The 7 mini parks, although we call them mini parks, on the average they cost you about $4 to $5 million apiece to build and construct, and they're still underway.
It's
So
just
We're
that's-
talking about Area 10.
well,
Area 10, I think we got 2.
My only point is you can't find many
Talking about-
sites to put a couple soccer fields on. That kind of area is
And it
rare.
doesn't, we will continue to try that, and
and if I can, your CIP currently contains a soccer field over on Columbus School, which is one of the very park-deficient areas that, as we know, will cost about $3.5 million just for the public improvements, not including land value.
by the way, Mr. Milano, I do have this. Thank you. All right, what's next, please?
6 is a business agenda, and at 6A is a public hearing. Director of Development Services regarding parking exception for Kanam's Judo Club located at 3710 San Fernando Road. At 6A1 is motion approving a 15-space parking exception.
With that, I'll go to Mr. Lansby.
Mr. Chairman, members of the agency, this is a request for parking exception for Keenan's Judo Club at 3710 San Fernando Road. That's just near the intersection of San Fernando Road and Brand Boulevard. The site previously was occupied as a daycare facility. It was a legally occupied site. They had a zoning use certificate. Our code would require, with the change of use, an additional 15 spaces for the judo club. We do have an exception in our code. It's important to note the tenant here that's requesting the exception rented 2,100 square feet. There's a provision in our code that allows a change of use without increasing the parking if it's 2,000 square feet or less. So this use is just over requiring the parking exception. The tenant signed the lease in September of '06, occupied the site in November of 2006, without knowing that he needed to get a zoning use certificate. When he was made aware of that, he tried to do the right thing, came in, which triggered an evaluation of the parking. Since the time that he's been operating in November, staff is not aware of any complaints. There is a lot of drop-off and pickup, so there isn't the need for a lot of parking. There is a commercial area all around, some on-street parking. The tenant has arranged to use the Harley-Davidson parking lot across the street. Their operation starts about 6:30. Harley-Davidson on the weekdays closes at 6, so that's a good use. Staff is recommending that you approve this. I do have, you have been provided a replacement or a revised motion. It just adds the condition that makes if you approve the parking exception, applicable to this use. So if this use should go away, the new tenant would have to come back and look at parking situation again. And if it needed an exception, the redevelopment agency would be able to consider that, giving the conditions at that time.
Mr. Weaver.
The letter we have in here, Exhibit 2, indicates that he has 2 sites for parking. Has that changed?
I
Talks about the MB medical bill.
I saw that they had 2. I
Billing.
believe one, Jackie can answer for you, but I know it was Harley-Davidson.
Well, I knew,
They
but
had the agreement.
this said 2.
Hi, they did work on an agreement with another site at 3712. When I checked into that, it didn't seem to be conforming, the parking, and so I didn't want to include that.
My question is, this is almost in an area that we have the Luna Playhouse.
Yes.
And has anybody talked to them about, on days that they have plays, will this create any problems?
I don't know that we've
Because
specifically talked to them.
The plays take place after 6 o'clock.
But for the period of time since November, so for the last 10 months, we're not aware of any conflict.
And they have been operating for 10 months?
Yes.
As a
Since
judo
November-
club?
Since November of 2006.
I have 2 cards. Barry Allen.
Mr. Chair, I might recommend you open the public hearing.
Public hearing is open. That's why I'm calling it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
It's open.
The agency and the public. I'm Barry Allen with Vanguardians. I have no objection to judo clubs. The area that I object to is the fact that we have more and more variances in CUPs. We have cut the staff at neighborhood services, so we don't have any code enforcement people that work weekends and other times when this could be a problem. It seems to me that this club has worked out arrangements with some of the other neighbors, but the problem really stems from if we agree to a CUP here or a variance here, and Mr. Najarian has talked so much about what the children need, Well, in 5 or 6 years, when the children get older and they start living over there and they realize, because we get more multiple use in that area, that there's no parking, and we haven't taken that into consideration. That means that we aren't looking at this as we should. It's just a rubber stamp for another variance. And I think that every time we grant a variance, we have to look at how it's going to be enforced and who the enforcement people are. As from looking at budget documents, I think Neighborhood Services has lost 5 enforcement people over the last 5 years. And that does go to the quality of life and to the problems that we suffer in the city. And this would only exacerbate that. I was at a graduation for Impact Personal Safety, and they have a similar situation. They have, in West Hollywood, they have made an arrangement with a neighboring store so that they could park their excess parking. There were, I think, 15 people in the class. There were 4 instructors, or 5, and each of those 15 people for graduation brought 8 to 10 other people. It may only be once every 2 or 3 months that they do that, but it does make a serious impact. And I have no idea what the needs will be here. And I think the comment about the Luna Playhouse is certainly very valid, and that must be considered. Thank you. I'm Barry Allen.
Thank you. Okay, there are 2 people who have filled in 1 card, so I just want to know if...
First one.
Just the first one. Argish Beglarian. Your name?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Argish Beglarian.
Okay.
And I'm a cousin of Aram Rugasyan, the head instructor of Kinam Judo Club, writing this letter to ask you to look into our proposal to continue our hard work for the community and youth generation for City of Glendale. He's been in judo coach for the last 15 years, and he's continuing his hard work training successful athletes. He's proud member of United States Judo Federation and United States Wrestling Federation. Kinam's Judo Club has moved to 3710 San Fernando Road, Glendale, in November of 2006, and is continuing its operation until as of today. Somehow we're having difficulty to get approved for our license from the City of Glendale because of parking situation. Our club's operating hours are Monday to Friday from 6:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. Club square footage is 2,100 square foot, and we are required to have 15 parking spaces. We can provide 17 parking spaces, which we are allowed to use from our neighbors, whose operating hours are until 5:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. We have proper documentation from the business owners, which we are including copies with this letter that we are allowed to use their parking spaces. The facilities are following MB Medical Billing and the Harley-Davidson shop, and plus the 99% of the customers are children, and they're dropping, parents are dropping, so there is no need of parking spaces. 99% of the time parents are dropping and picking up. So if we're looking this...
Do you have any conflicts between your establishment and the Luna Playhouse when they have events? There's no issues?
No problems.
Okay. And are you the principal and the judo club?
I'm cousin of, I'm kind of translator, but I'm cousin of Aram Rugasyan, the owner.
So Aram is the one who owns the property?
He owns the owner.
He's
He's the head
one.
coach.
So, okay, he owns it and he is also the instructor.
Exactly.
Okay, does Aram needs to speak or you just did his work for him?
I did his work.
Okay, thank you.
Question.
Mr. Weaver.
Okay, there's conflict here. They say they have permission for MB, and you're saying no? MB. He just said MB Medical is giving them permission. I asked the question, are they in or out? And how many spaces if they're in?
I spoke with the owner of that company, and she did give them the okay to use that space. When I looked at the space, it's legal non-conforming is what it appears to be. They're using it as a parking lot, but it's not striped, so I didn't want to
So
allow
there really
them
are
to...
no parking spaces there.
Right. I mean, they're there, but they're not legal spaces.
So he can't count it, but he can still use it.
Correct.
Okay. We don't see, we don't know.
Some questions. Mr.
Questions?
You could sit down.
Unless you want to well, it's for the owner.
Okay.
It's for Mr. Aram.
Aram, would you come up?
Who are most of your classes geared toward?
Kids that have dropped off.
Excuse me, sir. Can you say?
To whom are most of the classes geared?
Age-wise, I guess. right?
Age-wise?
Children, adults, seniors?
Children.
Do the parents, what do the parents do when they drop the kids off, generally?
Sometimes, not usually, sometimes they come, they want to watch their kids, but 99% they're just dropping off. It's 1 hour or 2 hours, whatever, and then after that they come and pick up.
And what is the early, I see your hours, but is it true then that the earliest during the weekdays that you start are 6:30 p.m.?
Yes.
Yes. Because children in school.
There's in school.
Morning time in school, evening time.
Are you willing to obtain a lease from Harley Davidson for the spaces instead of just a letter that says you can use them?
Man lease kara sonest parking lot. They're just their neighbors, so they're just letting him to use the parking spaces because their operating hours are they're finished at 5:30 p.m. and his business starts at 6:30, so that there is no need for them to use the parking spaces, so they're just letting him to use it.
And the parking that's across the street, is it right at the corner? I'm concerned about the crossing of San Fernando.
It is mid-block. You would have to go down to Brand and San Fernando Road.
And then cut across. Are most of the children from the neighborhood?
Yes. Some children, they're driving bicycle.
Okay, I don't have any other questions.
Did you have a studio in another location before you came here?
Not in the United States, back in Armenia.
Okay. And how many students do you have?
20, 25.
Right now?
About 25?
20,
25. And very few, you don't have many teenagers or adults? That,
Yes.
99% are children, not even teenagers.
okay. Mr. Weaver and I were looking for a place to do some sparring, so I thought maybe you might accommodate.
Speak for yourself.
You're more than welcome.
His students might take you, though.
No, strictly with Weaver, not with the students.
I ain't going there with either one of them.
I have a question on the same line as Mr.
There's only four of us
Najarian,
up
I
here.
forgot his name. I'm getting old. Mr. Najarian asked is that you have a letter from Harley Davidson today. Harley Davidson is there today. We don't know how long they're going to be there. I mean, if they decide to relocate, we don't know whether or not the next property owner will be willing to sign something for you as a, they just want to be nice to you. My question is, in the past, we used to require that the property that you're leasing the space from had to do some kind of a covenant. Now, we have moved away from that, but we would like to have some sort of documentation to ensure that at least you have a certain amount of time that you could use that parking spaces. My worry is you get this letter, the guy says, fine, you park your vehicles there, and then tomorrow he decides he doesn't want you to use there. Where do you park your vehicles?
Okay, here's the question. A couple of businesses located to the most central and San Fernando, there's a Bank of America. We don't have a letter, but we talked to them. We asked them same question, that if we need, can we use some of your parking spaces?
You talked to Zare?
I don't know, some of the managers.
Okay, that owns the old Bank America building.
No, I didn't talk myself, sir,
Okay.
but club members. They talk. So we don't have a letter or anything right now,
So
official.
Roll is
But
members.
they're ready to do that. So in case if the Harley Davidson decided to move or not continue the lease agreement or something, so they decided to have a couple of spaces.
Okay.
So it
Mr.
shouldn't be
Draymond.
any problem.
This is really a question for our legal beagles. If does Harley Davidson, first of all, do they own the property? Or
Yes,
are
they own all of their property.
So if they issue a lease to this business to use the parking after a certain hour, and then they do relocate, or if they just decide they don't want to continue, aren't they pretty much in the same boat anyway, with a lease or without a lease?
Mr. Chair, members of the agency, Member Draymond, they are. The findings for this motion do not depend on the availability of the Harley-Davidson parking. It analyzed the use and its impacts, meaning that it is after commercial hours, and looking at the use being a drop-off, pickup operation, pedestrian, destination, and off of the peak commercial hours, the availability of on-site parking, the relatively small site, low number of users. Those were the facts that were taken into consideration, rather than a dependency in these findings upon the availability of Harley-Davidson or MB Billing or any other, potential site where they could park off of the street.
So what you're saying is, even if that Harley-Davidson didn't exist, you would still recommend to approve their 15 space?
That is staff's recommendation, correct. But the fact that there is availability is something that certainly...
Right, but it's not part of your findings in here.
It is not part of the findings based on the facts that staff analyzed.
Mr. Starbird.
Mr. Chair, but without having it be a formal lease, you could, as a condition, obligate the owners of the judo club to continue to have access to the Harley-Davidson facility. So if for some reason Mr. Shoku decided to no longer let that be available to them, and if a problem resulted, then you'd have a basis to revoke the variance unless they found other suitable means to address their parking. You wouldn't necessarily need to have it be a lease, but you could essentially flop it and say, well, you're obligated to have some means. Mr. Shoku at Harley-Davidson meets that currently. If it becomes a problem, and you get complaints, and maybe that's because Mr. Shoku has withdrawn his offer and they can't find suitable parking, you would have a basis to have a revocation hearing and say, well, we're sorry, but without parking, you're going to have to essentially go find a different place to run your business. So you could shift the burden in a different way if the parking condition concerns you. So you could condition Harley-Davidson's availability or other suitable parking of that nature on their continued use of this site with the variance. Correct, Jillian?
That's absolutely correct.
And would that need to be, that needs to be a part of this condition?
Yes, in
On
fact,
this?
I'm drafting it right now in the event that you're
Okay.
interested in imposing such a
Okay.
condition.
And that's my concern mostly, is in case something happens, and it's not of their doing, they may have some people who use the facility, they come in and they decide to do some crazy things and they vandalize Mr. Shoku's parking space or whatever. So he just says, you know what, I just don't want to deal with this. You can't go there. I know that property real well. That property on that corner has absolutely no parking at all. I had a friend who actually had a business on that property as a art studio, and basically could not get any customers because there wasn't enough parking. Now, his type of business works real well because it's just a drop-off and leave, but once in a while, parents want to come and check out the kids, see how good they're doing, and so on and so forth. So there need to be some kind of a place for them to park. So that's my concern, is I'll be fine with that type of a condition, at least.
Plus, can I say something? Plus, at this time, 6:30 p.m., Brand Boulevard, there are street parking lots, parking spaces, and every businesses are closed, and it's all the parking spaces are free.
But there are other projects that are opening over there that it does give me some concern, and I just want to make sure no reflection on your business. You're doing fine. I'm not saying I'm not voting for this. I'm going to vote for this, but I like to have a little bit of a thing there, so later on I don't set a bad precedent for others. That's mine. Mr. Draymond.
I'm not interested in requiring them to have a lease for a number of reasons, but I think the most obvious is what was just pointed out. But I would support the motion amended in this way for a slightly different reason, not because of other projects and so on, but because I hope your business is going to be very successful, and I hope you're going to grow. And when you grow, you may have a greater percentage of adults or other people that are going to need to park. So with the idea that Mr. Quintero and Mr. Weaver are going to become your next students, they're not going to be dropped off, so they're going to need to park somewhere.
You're reading too much into this.
So.
Where'd you start?
Park them in two different places.
So,
Dorian.
Mr. Chair, if my colleagues have made the comments, I would like to move the item with the recommendations that they have parking available, not necessarily a lease.
Could you read that, please, into the record?
Yes, here's a stab at it. It would, something like this, that during Keenum's Judo Club's use and occupancy at the site, the club shall secure an arrangement to use the to use, including but not limited to, via a lease, the Harley-Davidson site for parking.
That'll be my motion.
I'll second it.
Including but not limited to.
It's not a lease.
Not just, I'd rather
Could be
word it a
lease.
little bit different, either Harley-Davidson or any other location nearby.
But it's not necessarily a lease.
No.
Not paying
No,
anything.
no,
Not
lease.
limited to. That's the but not limited to.
No,
If
but
they
when you say
secure a
lease-
lease, that would be okay,
A lease or
or some other
You could say the parking needs to be made
arrangement.
available to them. It may be nothing more than the
Through a
informal
lease
approval now.
or other
Well, I don't
means.
think you need the additional words in there. You just say the parking as they've described at Harley-Davidson needs to be made available to them, or suitable replacement parking.
but I'm getting tied up on the word lease. Lease usually
I'd take lease
needs
out.
money.
I'd take lease out.
Then it would just be
That's what I mean.
needs to be made available.
arrangement to use.
Right,
And
arrangement
that
is a good word.
They don't
arrangement
need
to
lease in
use.
there.
That's how it'll read.
That would be the motion.
Second.
Just a quick question.
Find nearby.
Go ahead.
Say it's a franchise. I mean, who is Kenham, of Kenham Judo, just out of curiosity?
Yes, I am.
That's him.
My middle name.
Middle name?
Well, what I guess I'm getting is, what is Kenham? Is that a name? Is that a type of judo?
His middle name.
It's like kind of a tradition. His father, they called him like Keenum. It's not a real first name. It's like kind of a nickname. They called Keenum his father. They called him Keenum. So it's like family names, something like that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm recommending one more addition to that, and that it specifies that it's nearby.
I'll accept that
Right.
as maker.
Okay, and the second is okay with that? All right, there's a motion and a
I just
second.
have one comment. Don't get too settled in there. You look at this, 10, 20 years, it's going to get redeveloped, that whole corner, because there is no parking. Somebody's going to come in there and either put a medical building in there because of proximity to the memorial or housing. That's the premier corner coming into Glendale. It's not going to stay that way forever.
Or he's going to buy the whole building and make a
You probably
huge
got
judo
5,
club.
10
Like
years
you
at
said,
least.
the business is gonna grow. He's gonna move somewhere else.
Right.
Buy a big
And a
place.
medical center.
He has professional athletes. They're like
Take all of them.
California champions. So maybe a couple of years he has like world champions.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Agency members Draymond.
Yes.
Najarian.
Yes.
Quintero.
Yes.
Weaver.
Aye.
Chairman Yusefian.
Aye. What's next, please?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
At 6B is public hearing, Director of Development Services regarding identity signage for Daphne's Cafe located at the Glendale Marketplace. At 6B1 is a motion approving a sign variance for size and location of Daphne's Cafe. At 6B2 is a motion denying the sign variance and design for a tenant identification signage for the marketplace. And at 6B3 is a motion approving the sign variance and design for a tenant identification signage for the marketplace.
Okay, and with that, I'll go to Ms. Lands of Fame.
Mr. Chairman, members of the agency, the signage that's proposed at the Marketplace, let me back up. The Marketplace is a redevelopment project that was built in 1997. As part of that project, it had a sign program that the agency at the time approved, outlining what types of signage could be used in the center. With the decline in patronage, the owners, the Eagle Group, has been trying to do different things to try and bring life back to the center. The Outback Restaurant that you had discussed earlier and approved some modifications to the agreement is part of that. They have also brought Daphne's from the Glendale Galleria. Their lease was set to expire. Daphne's was looking for more exposure and wanted to be on Brand Boulevard, and this looked like a good location for them. This item is really two parts: the signage specific to Daphne's, and then some tenant identification signage that's proposed. So we'd like to take them in that order. Daphne's, because of their location, if they were to put a blade sign that is
Describe blade.
Blade sign is a projecting sign from the
Perpendicular.
There you go,
the
see?
wall.
It's flat on the wall.
It's flat, and it projects out over so that you can see it when you're perpendicular.
Because you're using a terminology that is not generally known to all the public. I think of ice skates and a blade.
Very simple. If you have a sign that goes against the wall, it's flat sign.
Well, that's what I wanted to
If
say.
you go this way, this is a blade sign, this is a flat sign. Okay.
Blade sign would project out from the wall.
From the wall itself, perpendicular to the wall.
Right, 90 degrees to the wall.
Because
Okay.
of the location of this spot, it's in a curved area, a blade sign is not visible from either Brand Boulevard or Maryland. What Daphne's is proposing is to use what's called an under canopy sign, and that's what you have in your packets as Exhibit 1. The under canopy sign is allowed by code, but it is not part of the sign program for this particular project. The staff from Development Services and the principal urban designer both visited the site and looked at the proposed sign for Daphne's, the under canopy, and thought that it is appropriate. The code prescribes a specific size of under canopy. This sign is bigger than that, almost twice the size, but it is there for visibility. We think that this type of signage would be appropriate for that location to get visibility from Brand and from Maryland to allow the exposure that the restaurant is looking for.
So if all the other stores in there wish to do the same thing, they will go through this same process.
There's only two stores,
Just the two on that
Daphne's
side?
and Baja Fresh, that really fall into this unique space where the blade sign is ineffective.
So in the curve area, so
Right.
it's likely
The others
Baja
don't.
might be in here too.
They may be.
Let me ask you a question. On this page, which we are showing the Daphne's sign, it says Greek Cafe, and it looks like it's in front of the palm tree. I'm assuming that is not correct, right?
It would actually be on the wall behind the palm.
Okay, so it's more of this one.
Yes.
So he will have under canopy sign that will hang down, and he will also have the one that will be attached to the wall.
That's right.
Okay. And currently, there is an existing boiling point sign to be removed, and so that sign is going to be removed. It's going to be replaced by this Daphne sign in its place. So the only additional sign in here for Daphne's is the under canopy sign.
In lieu of that boiling point blade sign that you see,
Right.
the other one.
Right. So the blade sign, instead of coming out of the wall, this one just dropping down from.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. So that's which motion is that? If you want to approve that, that's motion 1. Is that B1?
That, I believe, is B1.
I'll move it.
So that's
Wait, is the
B1.
public hearing,
No, I'm just trying to understand the process, so that's B1.
Mr. Chair,
Okay.
if I could note, however, in your packet, it is stamped as 6B3, but for purposes of the agenda itself, it is correctly identified as B1, the first one to be
Right.
considered.
Right. Okay. Now, we got Daphne's straightened out. Next item.
The next is a request, again, in an effort to provide more visibility to the other tenants in the center for what we'll call tenant identification signs. They are, we've got a rendering here for you, an Exhibit A. What they propose to do is place can signs, if you will, along the bridge. They are they're nice quality, but still, we believe that this sign is more appropriate for a suburban, auto-oriented center as opposed to an urban pedestrian center. When we had talked to the applicant, the principal urban designer had conveyed some ideas, some alternatives through development services staff back to the sign consultant and the applicant. They considered those, but chose to bring this design forward. Again, staff would not recommend this type of signage, rather some other signage. You've been given some images. Alan Loomis is here. Not necessarily these signs. These images tell you the concept that staff would recommend. Individual letters placed directly onto the building or the bridge itself, lit either goose lighting, some backlighting. There's also the idea of a, for lack of a better term, monument sign that could be nicely done and placed further out, closer to Brand Boulevard.
Has staff provided us those signs, those designs?
You should have gotten a packet of images earlier today.
I don't have that.
I'm now lost
Yeah.
again.
Okay.
This is on my desk, but I'm lost again. I mean, I can see a monument type,
We've got them here that we can project them.
Thank you.
but these seem to be, they're not blades, they're not, what are they? The flat
Those are just wall signs.
wall signs. They all appear to be wall signs, and they could not be seen from Brand either, so where are some alternatives to...
I think if I can, that's the nature of the sign. For example, if you took that, as opposed to a box sign or a can sign, where you insert individual plastic fronts on a metal can that's in illuminated interior, that you instead place individual letters or individual signs directly on the wall.
How's it different from that, then? These
That's
are
a
all
ca-
different fonts.
That's a can sign. You have plastic fronts that go on a metal can with usually fluorescent tubes in the back of it, as opposed to having individual signs mounted on the
So
wall.
the only difference between this and what staff's talking about is take it out of the metal can and
Yes.
still put them in the same
And
location?
it's a matter of quality and look. It's all about aesthetics and quality and look. This generally viewed as frankly, a cheaper, lesser quality than doing individual signs per
I'm
business.
just saying, I have nothing to look at other than the written script. And I'm having trouble visualizing. And if you want me to turn this down and vote for something else, show me an example.
Mr. Clerk, if you could lower the screen and turn on the projector.
Yeah, if you got anything.
Artie, you could lower the screen and put down the projector.
Tell me about the continuous metal screen and the lighting. I can't visualize it.
Actually, we've got, not in your packet there, the consultant has offered us some other images. You can see it on the monitor before it comes up on the screen. And
See, that's occupying an entire store
Mr.
frontage.
Loomis can help me with
So
this.
you're going to reduce the
Could
font on that?
we switch the lights around?
Oh.
I mean, darken the front and lighten the back.
This is the way it's set for that screen.
Okay. All right, so now it's hotter.
This is one idea. Again, individual letters attached to a screen that you see here. This, although different letters and different look, but picture that where it says Dogma, that is the bridge, having individual letters attached. And
Maybe it's coming clear to me now. You take this and you shrink it down in font size to where 810 can get on that same space, but done this way.
Something along those lines. Or what we also
So now I
would-
understand. If you can do it on a small one,
something like this is another idea that could be used, something more of a monument.
but I mean, I'm looking at that much space. I don't know how many have to go there.
Mr. Weaver, what we're suggesting is perhaps not do it on the bridge, but do something like this as a monument that you could have individual letters on a background.
Okay, that's what I was
In
wondering.
terms of a monument, though, that's a pretty tight space in that courtyard already. So a monument, to me, is going to take up even more space. It's kind of congested as it is.
Well, it would have to go in front of the courtyard, right? It's not going to be in the courtyard.
Have to go in front, closer to Brand Boulevard so that it would be visible.
And that section of Brand Boulevard, it actually has a very, it pops out, doesn't it?
There's a bench there. It would take up whatever space, that area of the monument from the plaza. But there is some space there. These are ideas, though, and that's why what we would suggest is to go back and trying to design something along those lines.
So, may I ask then, you're not asking us per se to deny it today, but to direct you to go back and look at alternatives, and perhaps you'll be back with the same thing again, right?
Well, no, I think the staff is requesting you deny this concept, that you deny this proposal. They've applied for it, we've asked them to go back and look at something better quality, and they said, no, we want to do this.
Well, I understand
We
that
think there's
part.
other ways to address this that'll be of more quality
Well, why
than
can't
what
we
they're
see
suggesting.
some examples of how it would look on this size?
Well,
I'm having trouble.
Mr. Weaver, for example, maybe the sign shouldn't go on that bridge. I mean, you're trying to put, how many?
I
6
don't know
or
how many
9
are in there.
different signs in a relatively small area that, frankly, if you stand back and look at the plaza, it's rather congested with signs now.
I know.
They protrude from all sorts of different directions. There just needs to be a better way from a design standpoint to solve this problem than putting up another can sign in a center that was designed to be a higher quality center, not a typical, strip mall with can signs on it.
Can then staff assure me that there are, and it will be done, and you'll bring back some that we'll find attractive?
Well, let me suggest it isn't just our responsibility. You've also got a sign company and designers that, frankly, we think should put a little more effort into this.
I know, and if we deny it, that's what we're telling them to do.
Absolutely. If you deny it, you'd say, come back with a better design, and we'll work with them to try and accomplish something.
One comment.
I mean, before you go there, just look at, Dave, if you look at that Zeke's,
Yeah.
look at that with the dog and that. I mean, the staff is talking, instead of having a flat thing, if you
Understand that.
put that
But if you
in
have to
here.
put 6 or so on that size
Right.
thing,
You
that's
want to
pretty
actually
congested.
see how that is going to play on that site.
If you had to put 10 or 12 on there, how are you going to put it on there?
Right.
You're really shrinking it. makes
Mr.
you want
Chairman,
it to be
our point
3D.
is then maybe they shouldn't go there. Maybe they need to
not.
try and solve this problem in a different way, in a more innovative way that maintains
All I
equality.
need to know is the assurances that there are other ways that can do it. And we won't come back a month or two later and say, we couldn't find any other thing, you have to buy this or else.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, one thing that I should tell you, in our search, Mr. Loomis has looked, he can't find a center that has done this tenant kind of identification in this type of way.
So we're going to be the first one to get it the right way.
Which
Good.
way?
The way that we are suggesting it to be done.
Okay.
That
We can
it
set
just
the-
is, that's not, they have
set the
gone
model.
more to this type of look with a monument sign.
Okay,
Oh, so
we
they
can
have
see
gone
it.
more to
Set
this.
the model.
More to this as
Which one?
opposed to having multi-tenants
Yeah, for lunch, Mr.
on a bridge or a
pretty
side.
good.
See some
Mr. Loomis can
lime.
talk more to that if you have questions on it.
Lemonade.
Mr. Loomis, do I need to open up the hearing still? For
Yes.
Mr. Loomis to speak?
Yes.
Okay, I'll open the hearing.
Staff comment.
It's just, I
Mr.
can't
Loomis.
see it.
Just to clarify on Mr. Lansfame's comments, it is very uncommon, if not unprecedented, to see multi-tenant signs of this variety on a pedestrian-oriented shopping center in an urban environment.
And
It's
what you're
very
ta-
common in
Okay,
suburban
explain
shopping
to me
centers.
what you're talking about, what they're proposing?
what they're proposing is very
So
uncommon.
you're
in
talking
similar
about
centers.
what they're proposing is very uncommon.
Exactly.
Okay.
Strip malls and things like that, it is.
Yeah, in suburban, auto-oriented centers, it's very common, but in urban-oriented centers, not so.
Okay.
Okay, and what is common in this type of environment, in
Doesn't
this type of quality project?
What you would typically see is what's there today in the marketplace, which is each individual tenant has their own sign or signs, more than one. It's also not uncommon to see the informational kiosk or directional pylon located near the pedestrian entrance to the center. So something similar to the pylon we see in that image, or maybe the ones, for lack of a better term, the image you would have seen on the old TV show MASH, where they had all the arrows pointing to different, the different cities where the characters were from. Some variation of that, but obviously a higher quality than what you would see on the 4077.
Mr. Quintero, then Mr. Draymond.
Well, while I do agree with Mr. Loomis, well, first of all, the Daphne sign for me is fine. I think that business, that location absolutely needs that sign. In terms of this, I mean, I agree with Mr. Loomis that perhaps there's another better and more sophisticated way. However, quite frankly, when you look at the list of businesses that are there, Cold Stone Creamery and Panda Express, et cetera, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I can't imagine that this tenant mix is going to change too much more. So I feel somewhat comfortable with this. I think it'll be easier to read up there. This whole, from the very beginning, I never liked the layout of this courtyard, this entrance to the marketplace. It's always congested with people, and I'm not sure that a monument sign would necessarily work. I think from across the street on Brand, or just even walking by it, and this isn't the end of the world. Maybe they can try to spiff up the individual signs a little bit, but that bridge, to me, I think that's a logical place to put it.
Well,
whatever.
Mr. Draymond.
I actually didn't have my hand up. I was just, but I might as well give a comment.
I saw a hand go off.
But I might as well give a comment now. I guess that's never stopped me in the past. So, the Daphne sign, Chair, I don't have a problem with. I would have a problem if all of the tenants in that center were asking for under canopy signs. I would, but the two that are on the curve, I certainly understand that, and I think the under canopy signs work well. I have some experience with business districts and so on, so I don't have a problem with that. Personally, I don't. This is just personal preference. I don't care for the sign on the bridge for a number of reasons. One is whether it is this kind of signage. Or a different type of signage applied to the bridge, I think is going to be so small as to be inconsequential and defeat the reason for even having it there, other than just to say we've done something. I would like to see a monument sign. I disagree slightly with Mr. Quintero on that. The mix is what it is there, but the whole idea is that you still want to get foot traffic in there to these businesses, and therefore I would prefer to see a monument sign so that those tenants, whether they're national retailers or chains or what have you, have an opportunity to have exposure closer to Brand Boulevard. So, even national chains can go away if they don't have business. So, anyway, that would be my first choice. Would be to have a monument sign of some sort, something that gives them the tenants greater identification from Brand Boulevard. Where this is, it may satisfy the need to be able to say to tenants, I've given you signage, but I don't think it's going to do anything in there. You look at that, even that photograph, this image here, and it is just a photograph filled with visual distraction. Just a whole lot of visual imagery that's just all over the place. I think it's going to be lost and not worth the effort or the money, and I don't think it'll do the tenants much good there. So that's how where I'm inclined. I would say let's come back with something else in place of that.
Mr. Weaver?
I feel the same way. I think the monument sign, I don't especially like that architectural design on it, but something where the tenants change, you can switch in and switch out the names of them. I'm guessing that we're almost going to have to look at putting it somewhere on the sidewalk areas, especially if you put one out on Maryland for traffic going up and down. I don't know if we've ever allowed that, to have a monument sign on Brand or Maryland. This may be a first, but maybe it's appropriate in this case. I don't know, but I'd like to see a better architecture, but it belongs out there. Putting that cross corridor, you're going by, it's so busy, you're not going to be able to look in there and see those signs to distinguish while you're moving. So it's got to be out there and kind of, maybe it's got to be backlit so you can see it at night.
Mr. Najarian?
Well, the way I look at it, this is a special location. This is basically ground zero of the resurgence of Glendale's retail. You're going to have the Americana across the street, a Galleria, a revamped Galleria coming in. I think this is a very, aside from its geographic location, this is a very well-built center with the overhead lighting, the canned lights, the spotlights. You've got very expensive wrought iron lights hanging on the side. The polished wood of the entrance to Daphne's lends a certain type of panache. That's got to be an expensive squirting frogs water feature there. And many people are attracted to the facility because of those frogs and the unique design and articulation and the colors and the features that are present. So you've also got a two-story issue going with the open atrium feel. So I think it's only fair. You're going to have Outback with its, I think they've got that bright red neon lighting sign that's out there. So I think it would be very good if the sign architect would go back and come with something that's a little more fitting to the quality of the center. I think it'll help, keep consistent with the expensive features and improvements that are already present there. I see there's some nice flooring. I don't know if that's a polished marble or something right in front of Daphne's, but that's an expensive center. It's going to be right in this, ground zero of the action in Glendale. So I think something a little more articulated and artistic than the proposed walkway sign would be called for. But I have a question, just to step back, on this whole blade sign. I'm looking at page 7 of 9. This is what's described as a blade sign.
No,
hanging.
that's under canopy.
That's under canopy, it's hung.
See, it's hanging from above.
This is described as a blade sign. It's a new illuminated double-faced logo blade sign. So I didn't make that up. That's
Staff
that.
wrote it wrong.
I'm not sure who wrote that.
This is from the consultant. And
Okay,
I think that's not what we refer to as a blade sign.
Right.
But then also, it's the under canopy sign is described. It looks like it's the same picture. So
Yeah.
if that's just a misprint,
I think so too.
Yeah.
that's why I had a little confusion as to what was the blade
If
and what was not.
Well,
just
you're an
by-
attorney, you catch those.
if these
The blade, it may be a blade sign
off
if it's
the
this way.
so off the vertical
It's
feature,
above,
not the
under
horizontal.
canopy.
I don't have a problem with that, per se. I think the Daphne's, the blade sign is more along the lines of the type of signage, and they do have that problem specifically to that particular spot because it does curve inward, and it might be often overlooked by folks strolling by or driving by, so.
Let me ask you one question. In this design, the Glendale Marketplace Paseo, is that a new introduction, or it's already there?
that, I believe, is already there.
That's already there. So the signs are going underneath what's already existing sign down there. Okay. Let me ask, any other question for the staff?
Just one. If you're going to look at a monument-type sign, try to pick up the earth colors that are in. the marketplace itself, so it looks like it's not foreign to the rest of the short block.
Mark Frank?
Put a frog on.
After we beat him up, now he'll speak.
Good afternoon. I'm Mark Frank, and I'm the designer that designed the sign. And when I started with the process, in meeting with Daphne's and trying to handle their needs, and then the owner, Scott Silver from Eagle Group, I read through the sign program that was developed in 1997. And they have the word accepted sign techniques on page 16. Dimensional, metal, plastic, glass, or other materials with a permanent appearance. Then they also have on page 17, push-through acrylic inserts. And then on the very last page, flexibility. Accommodate imaginative, unique, and otherwise tasteful signage. So I looked at a lot of different things, and I wanted to try to incorporate from the main design, you all have the drawing with this top section. That comes above the Mann Theater. The Glendale Marketplace has a sign which I have scaled that down to fit on that walkway. So that's the same open neon with the push-through marketplace for sale. Okay, same design and without reinventing a new look. Then the marquee letters that are on the panel, those are 14 inches high, about this high, and they're 57 inches long. All these pictures are great for storefronts. You know, you can't get neon tubing or LEDs inside something that's that big. We're talking letters that are averaging 3 or 4 inches. The one thing that would help, which you guys don't have, and you ladies, we have, unfortunately, I didn't know, I could have brought a PowerPoint presentation. If you take that one picture, to help understand the panels, they're not the inexpensive plastic-based panels. They are a push-through, half-inch dimensional letters, and I have a picture, bear with me. Oh, somebody? Okay, you're looking at those pictures. Imagine that sign scaled down to 14 inches to 57 inches wide. That's the look that we were trying to create. Now, the background plate, I noticed that you mentioned the fog display. This is like a copper patina or a dark bronze patina. The background behind these panels can be the dark bronze, similar to the dark bronze frame that we see there. But when I was looking at this criteria, again, tasteful signage, I was trying to create something tasteful. I started out originally with everybody's round, different odd-shaped logos on the 5-foot by 20-foot, 23-foot background. Got a little too busy, whether you put spotlights on it or backlight it or whatever. And we have 12 names up there. So I was trying to keep something that was tastefully done with this type of look that could have LEDs or neon inside these so-called cabinets. Also, if you look on one of the exhibits, the side profile is it's not a flat can mounted flush to the wall. It is pegged off the wall. I believe you all have this detail here, and if you look at the side section, it says TBD, to be determined. So it's not flush to the wall because of the cornice trim with the Glendale Marketplace letters above. We want to keep that on the same level, so it's floating off the wall. And so we have a step, you have a pan face 1.5 inches deep with those push-through letters. The background could be that dark bronze patina color, but again, I was trying to be a tasteful sign with the graphics that's already there from the Glendale Marketplace sign. So, and like the other gentleman said, this is uncommon, but this is also an uncommon shopping center. You're looking at Target, Best Buy, and, major tenants. These are 12 smaller tenants. They've had turnovers. It's a lot less expensive to replace one of these 14-inch panels than having a lot of holes on a perforated background. Somebody moves out, then you've got a whole section that has to be redone, and it gets very costly. So we're trying to be cost-effective, and every time I've been there, I've noticed that everybody has these little portable signs out there. Every given time I've been there, maybe we could eliminate that by hand that around. I circled that. And because people just feel that they're not finding their stores in there. So we'd like to help clean that up. by having the sign on the bridge. Now, one of the comments that we had working with Jackie, it's been great to work with, one of the trade-offs, if we could get rid of the what we call a wayfinding sign. There is a freestanding pole sign that identifies the upstairs tenant, the movie theater, Lennon's and Things, Bennigan, and it even says upstairs tenant. We can't get rid of that because those people, they would have a lawsuit on the landlord real quick if they said that coming down in lieu of getting the other panel, the other sign on the walkway. So one thing is a wayfinding for 4 tenants. And then another suggestion, a photograph that was given to me, was what I call a wayfinding sign that would work at the zoo, work at amusement parks, which says, pandas and polar bears and all the different directions. These are established businesses, and we can't get something on a panel that high, like a street sign, identifying Starbucks and Panda and all those different people. It would get too confusing to have what I call a wayfinding sign that works good in public places like a zoo.
Okay.
And but in any case, I think I'm going a little too far.
Yeah, your time has expired. I just want you to finish your thought process.
I'm finished, and I'd like to
Mr.
answer any
Starbird,
questions.
and then
Give us a sign. What's this?
So that when people are walking on Brand Boulevard and they can look over and see that this is a directory, a menu of who is in that courtyard.
You're not trying to reach.
No, not at all. This is strictly for the.
Large planter areas out in the right-of-way. It does seem to me that maybe it's not keeping with anything else we do, but you have area out in that parkway area that you could look at a nicely designed sign that would catch pedestrians and let them know the nature of businesses that are interior in the marketplace, as opposed to, frankly, more clutter inside. As John pointed out, when you stand back and look at all the signage that's in the center, you get such a clutter of signage that's going on. And now you take the bridge and you fill it full of 12 different signs for different businesses. And maybe there's a need to look at what could happen out in that planter that I suspect we'd have these signs on the bridge, and we'll still have individual merchants wanting to put their little signs, their teepee signs out on the sidewalk. That maybe it's time to look at how you might sign something out on the sidewalk, nicely done with a monument sign that could provide some pedestrian information on what's happening back in the center.
John.
Can I borrow those back for just a second, please? I have a couple of questions for you. This photograph on the bottom where you see the bridge in the background, how far is it roughly from that bridge to the edge of the sidewalk there before you enter the courtyard? Do we know?
We're looking at, when I had done a little survey up there from up above, we were talking about 60 feet, about 80 feet in from the sidewalk.
Just so my colleagues know, those frames on the wall up there are 11 by 14 frames. They're 11 inches wide and 14 inches tall. These are the individual spaces that he's describing on this gang board are 14 inches tall, like these, and it's about, so 5 of those together, one row is about the size you're looking at for one
80
frame.
feet away.
That would be a good judgment.
80 feet away.
And you can read.
And that is about what? Mr. Engineer, Mr. Contractor?
80 feet away, what do you mean?
How far is it to that last board, would you say, from the dais?
Oh, from here?
Yeah.
Probably about 25 feet.
Okay, so you're looking at roughly 4 times as far.
Now,
so anyway, excuse me just a sec. The other thing I notice here is that there's a reason, actually Mr. Starbird sort of landed on it. There's a reason that the tenants right now want to put these signs out on the sidewalk. It's because even though they're national retailers with a national recognition like Baja Fresh and who else is out here? Starbucks, et cetera, they're still putting signs out here, and the reason is because they're not getting foot traffic, they're not getting business, and they themselves are telling you by putting these signs, I don't even know if these are legal, but putting these out here, that, actually, let me rephrase that, I know they aren't, but at any rate, but they're telling you themselves that what they're actually after is something out on Brand Boulevard to let the foot traffic know that they are back there. That's why I'm more inclined to suggest something other than some kind of monument signage out in the front. And for me, it's not so much a matter of I'm not trying to handcuff you in any way. I'm about as lenient as a council person could be with regard to businesses trying to develop the way they see fit. But it seems to me it's pretty obvious that's what they're saying to you right here. We need foot traffic out on the street. I mean, in my experience, it's a mom and pop that wants that freestanding sign out there on the sidewalk. When you see, large national chains doing it, you know that they're asking for some kind of monument signage out on the boulevard there.
I have one comment to make to you. I was part of the group that wrote that sign ordinance, so I know it like back of my hand. I worked on it for, I think, 6 years to get that sign ordinance and believe me, it was a tough thing to do, because in the old days, we had an ordinance that was basically saying, you can't have this, you can't have this, you can't have this, you can't have this, but never told you what is it you can do. So this is a little bit more permissive sign ordinance that it used to be before, which was more prohibitive sign ordinance. Nevertheless, the parts that you have picked from the ordinance, there are parts from, this is an encompassing ordinance, so it does allow those type of signs in some areas that really worth it. This is an area that you have to go through a sign program. And the sign program areas, generally, you bring in the sign you want, and the zoning administrator and agency looks at it, and if they feel it is fitting that area, then they approve it. Just because it says you can have that doesn't mean you automatically get it. It's because of the sign program. Now, I want you to take a look at that particular sign right there. I want you to also imagine what is around the LAX. You've seen those big cylinders that change color all the time. You can have a sign that could also be a very nice element. You could have a sign like that, a little bit taller, so you could actually put the names on, and you could have it slowly change color. So it will be an architectural feature. It will be something that is really nice. It attracts people's attention to it. It's not animated because it's not changing, but nevertheless, it does give you what you want because the names will be there, and you could always change the letters that are around it. I think what my concern is with this particular design is the first time I saw this, it kind of brought me back to all the little projects that's on the corner of the street, and there's like 5 or 6 little mini markets there. This project is not that. This is a very high-end, good project. It's going to be across from Americana, and Americana actually, we have some designs. Remember those nice cylindrical signs that is going to be in Americana?
I haven't seen them. So
Okay, well, that's the kiosks, and that's something that you could take a look at and see maybe that is the answer. And that's what they need to do in Americana. They're going to create those kiosks. It's going to be circular. And so those are the type of things that we would like to see, at least I would like to see, instead of no matter, you could take a box sign and you could squeeze it in, you could pull it out, you could do all kinds of stuff. A box sign is a box sign. It doesn't matter whether the frame around it is patina or it's gold. So that's, I think, the direction I would like to see. And I do agree with Mr. Draymond. I think the issue in here is for the people who are getting to the site to know where to go. And I think if it's closer to the street, it's easier, more visible, rather than further out there and you can't see it. So that would be that direction that I would leave you with. And I would strongly suggest you talk to staff and see if you can get the drawings from the town center so he has some idea what those kiosks look like. It's nothing new. France, all over Europe, all over England. So we're not creating anything that just came out of the box today. It's out there. But look at those. But this feature, as I suggest, you don't have to take it. But when originally they put it around the airport, I go, what a stupid thing that is. But as I go to airport more and more and I see the colors change, it has become a monument almost to an extent. So that may be something that you may want to look at. Let me go to the next speaker, which is Albert Epkarian.
I could just get some feedback. There was a design that we didn't turn in, but it wasn't cost effective. But I'd like to get some comments and see if that was, keeping the architectural integrity of the building. And if I could add one thing, we talk about readership. For every 1 inch, this is from Caltech in Pasadena, 1 inch of letter you can read 50 feet away. So 4-inch letter, you can read that 200 feet away. So, and most of them with national registered trademark brand don't really read it. You recognize the symbol. So if something's that big, 80 feet away, they will be able to read it, regardless of what design we end up with. But 1 inch, 50 feet away, that's standard.
Mr. Stiffen, I guess the thing is, are you trying to reach the pedestrian or the driver?
Pedestrian.
Then you're forgetting the driver in this? Fine, but I would think you were trying to reach the driver coming up and down Brand. Oh, look.
That's not.
But if it's inside, you're never going to see it.
I was more after the pedestrian foot traffic.
Yeah, I think that's the first question.
This was a design, there's that little
sign, can you make out lettering from a given distance under absolutely optimal conditions, not in a visually congested area, not with trees, not with any of that? I mean, so, to me, that is, that study you refer to has absolutely nothing to do with application. It just has to do with, standards of human vision. So.
We're just trying to reach the people in that courtyard off of Brand, not the pedestrian traffic. But that was the basic sign originally taken onto the walkway.
And for me, that's the beauty. I mean, I think we would have asked for the sale, right?
Big time.
And the whole problem with the for sale is too narrow. As you drive by, your eye cannot see far back because it's so narrow.
Well, I apologize for my vote on that project at the time. I thought it was too small to begin with. Yeah. But that's the design was presented.
We didn't submit that because it wouldn't work, and that was just one of the earlier designs. So.
But regardless of that, still a good project. Don't. I'm not saying that this is a bad building.
I
think
want to look at what Americana's doing and take it and see what we can, but I want to
Step carrying. Who's been waiting patiently?
Mr. Chairman, members of the Redevelopment Agency. First of all, on behalf of the owners, we definitely appreciate the Daphne's sign being approved. That's very important. A couple of things that I want to mention. There's been a lot of discussion, businesses declining, a lot of negative vibes coming in reference to the actual marketplace itself. Since the new owners have taken over the place, we've done everything we've promised we were going to do. We said we were going to bring in OPAC, we did. We said we were going to improve security. We got Crusoe Security to now secure the place. If you go to the place, there are the same things that would happen. The frogs were not working at the time my clients took them over, and now they are. We brought in Daphne's, bringing in a very large national video game company called Play and Trade, which will really improve the site. They told us that the chairs and the tables are too old, and they asked us to change them. Every single chair and the table and the place will be replaced. And if any nonprofit would like to take the old ones, they're more than welcome to have them. So I just wanted to kind of give the indication that the center is doing well. Lennon, and things have opened. The center is basically rejuvenated, and based on the information we've got, we wanted the Daphne sign. The other sign was put in there based on budgeting. I would like to have a $20 million house up in the mountains somewhere in Beverly Hills. I can't because my pocketbook doesn't let me. That's probably the same reason why you didn't get a huge monument sign up front. With the issues that this center has had in the past few years, getting it back to where it's in blue, of course, is a priority right now at this point. We will look at some signs. The owners will look at some monument signing in the next 24 months or so in reference to that particular location. It's not something that we can take a look at with the type of direction that the council has given us or the redevelopment agency has given us today. One more thing I would like to ask you, please, is that you can't dictate to the owners what you want. You can work with the owners, make recommendations, and sit down with them and kind of shape what you're looking for. But when you dictate to the owners what you want and tell them what you want and say, if you don't take this, then you won't get it approved, that creates a very, very negative feeling. It creates a feeling where it's not going to be what we want. As Mr. Starwood mentioned, they don't want it, they don't have to have it. Well, that's a wrong attitude. You want something productive, we can sit down, we can talk about it in the long run, but when you tell people, these 4 designs are it, and take it, we want it to be exactly like this, you can't dictate to the owners the exact sign. You can tell them general ideas and have them be creative and let them do what they need to do. I do understand the recommendations made. I appreciate your concerns, and thank you very much for allowing us to speak.
Thank you. I have a question. Where is the, Mr. Abkarian, where is a proposed tenant going to be placed, a video company?
The video company will be where the old...
CompUSA?
No, Quiznos was. That location. The CompUSA, we are still, there are a number of legal issues that are being worked out currently, but there will be a tenant, and that place is paying rent, but it's not actually occupied at this point until the legalese are over.
My understanding was Walgreens was coming in, is that correct?
I'd rather not comment on it until all of the issues are resolved and all the issues. I'd rather not say anything on
Mr. Lansing.
Mr. Chairman, just a clarification, lest you start getting a lot of emails and the owners start getting a lot of emails, this is not a video arcade. It is a store that sells video games.
That's correct.
They will have some test stations, but it is not an arcade.
Yeah, I apologize.
Just clarification.
It is just a location, it's a large national retail store where they actually sell video games and trade video games. That's what they do.
Translation, Mr. Abkarian will be buying a lot of stuff for his kids.
My son will be very happy.
He's already waiting in line.
And I will be very happy. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay.
All right, I move...
is there a motion for 6B1?
I move 6B1.
Second.
There's a motion second. Roll call on 6B1.
Was the public hearing closed?
Public hearing is closed. Thank you very much for reminding me.
Agency members Draymond?
Just for clarification, this is to approve the Daphne sign?
Yes, that's what 6B1 is.
Agency members Draymond?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Weaver?
Aye.
Chairman Yusefian?
Aye. Is there a motion for 6B2?
So moved.
A second. So a motion and a second with comments, of course. We gave you some directions. Roll call, please.
Agency members Draymond?
Clarification, please. We've given them some options or directions, but the options and directions are not what we're voting on.
No.
So
all we're saying
Just
is
voting tonight.
go back, come back.
That was my point at the very beginning.
So then I'll be voting no.
Okay. Next.
Najarian?
Yes.
Quintero?
I'm a bit confused here.
This is a motion to deny the sign variance.
I'll come back with options.
It's motion
I
to
have
deny
that wrong,
this.
then. I'm sorry, then I have that wrong.
Okay.
I am going to vote to
Do-over.
deny, yes. Do-over, to borrow your phrase borrowed from me, a do-over.
So it's aye then.
Do we need some official...
So it's an aye.
Withdraw the vote.
Yeah, I'd like to ask that you withdraw the vote.
I'll second it.
Yes.
Okay. No,
Is there a
there's
motion
no-
for reconsideration?
No.
No.
The vote was not
Not
finished on the
completed,
motion,
okay.
so his
Right,
was
so he
withdrawn.
withdrew his motion, so roll call again on 6B2.
Agency member
moved it.
Draymond has voted aye.
No,
Jarian?
he's changing his vote.
Yes, to aye.
To aye.
Aye, yes.
Yes.
Just wanted to
All right,
point that
yes.
out to him.
Carol?
Yes.
Weaver?
Aye.
Chairman Yusefian?
Aye. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We're adjourned.